What would you say if a cop smiled at your window, asked one simple question, and used your own words to trap you? Because that happens every day, and most drivers talk themselves into bigger problems without even knowing it. The scary part is the officer doesn't need to yell at you to do it. A calm voice and a casual question can open the door to a search, more questions, and sometimes handcuffs. Hit subscribe right now because what you're about to hear could save you the worst day of your life. Like this video now so you can find it fast when you actually need these exact words. Here's what you need to know before you ever hear sirens behind you. Police are trained to make questions sound harmless. They'll ask where you're coming from, they'll ask where you're going, they'll ask if there's anything illegal in the car, they'll ask if you mind if they take a quick look, and the whole thing feels so normal that you start talking just to seem polite. That's the trap. Most people have no idea the stop can turn on one little sentence. In this video, you're going to learn the exact lines that shut down the fishing trip, when you should stay quiet, when you should comply, and when you should force the officer to either move the stop along or let you go. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos and the same mistakes keep showing up. Let me show you exactly how smart drivers protect themselves without acting rude, weird, or aggressive. Now let's talk about why you need this. When you get pulled over, your brain starts racing, your hands get shaky, you want to prove you're a good person. So you start filling the silence. You explain why you were speeding. You tell the officer you're just coming back from a friend's house. You joke around. You agree to things you never planned to agree to. And all of that feels harmless until one answer gives the officer a reason to keep digging. Here's the reality. The stop is supposed to be about the traffic issue. Your license, your registration, insurance, maybe a warning, maybe a ticket. Then you leave? But officers often try to stretch that moment into an investigation. That's where people get in trouble, not because they were dangerous, because they talked too much, guessed wrong, or consented out of fear. If you know the next few lines, you stay calm, you stay respectful, and you stop giving away your rights for free. The first thing you need burned into your memory is the search question. It may sound friendly, it may sound tiny. The officer might say, "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" Or, "Just making sure there's nothing in the car I need to know about." That is not small talk. That is a legal doorway. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Memorize that line. Say it calmly, say it clearly, then stop talking. Here's why this works. If you give consent, you just made the officer's job easy. Now they may not need a warrant, they may not need stronger facts, they can argue you agreed. And later, in court, that simple yes becomes a giant problem for you. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Schneckloth versus Bustamonte, the court said a search can be valid if your consent was voluntary. In plain English, if you say yes, the search may stand even if you did not fully understand how much you were giving away. That is why your refusal matters so much. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess so, I don't have anything to hide. Then the officer searches the car, opens containers, and suddenly your whole night changes. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to stand on actual legal grounds instead of your nervous permission. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it draws a bright line. It tells the camera, the officer, and later the judge that you did not agree. That matters even if the officer searches anyway. You are not fighting, you are not pulling away, you are not getting loud, you are protecting the record. That can save you later. Watch what happens when people get this wrong. They think being polite means giving permission. It doesn't. You can be respectful and still say no. You can hand over your license and still say no. You can stay seated, keep your hands visible, and still say no. This is 100% legal. You are not required to make the search easy for them. And if the officer already has a lawful reason to search, your refusal still matters because you did not help build the case against yourself. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A lot of officers ask for consent because it is faster and cleaner than proving a lawful reason. Your refusal forces the stop back onto legal rails. Maybe they let you go. Maybe they look for another angle, but at least you did not hand them the keys to your own problem. If you remember only one line from this video, make it that one. Still watching? Good. Drop a comment if an officer has ever asked to take a quick look during a stop, because I want to know how often you've heard that exact setup. The second trap is the friendly conversation trap. This one gets people every single day because it feels rude not to answer. The officer walks up and asks where you're headed, where you're coming from, whether you've had anything to drink, whether there's anything in the car, why you seem nervous, or whose bag is on the back seat. These questions are not always about being friendly. They are often about building suspicion one answer at a time. So here's your line. You look at the officer and say this: "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent and I'm not answering questions without a lawyer." Those exact words. Keep your tone flat. Keep your face calm. Then go quiet. A lot of people think silence alone protects them. Not always. In Salinas versus Texas, the Supreme Court said that in a non-custodial setting, just going silent without clearly invoking the right may not protect you the same way. Plain English, if you want that protection, say it out loud. Make it clear. That is why the wording matters. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when the questions shift from the traffic stop to your personal life or possible crimes. Now, be smart here. You still provide the basic documents you are legally required to provide. You do not refuse a lawful order. You do not reach around fast. You do not argue on the side of the road, but you stop volunteering information that can be twisted. If you say you're coming from a party, now they hear alcohol. If you say you're tired, now they hear impairment. If you say you were in a hurry, now they hear reckless driving. If your story changes because you're nervous, now they hear deception. Bad way. Most drivers say, I'm just coming from my cousin's place. I had 1 beer hours ago. I'm not hiding anything. Then the officer keeps digging, asks more questions, and starts stacking reasons to investigate. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent and I'm not answering questions without a lawyer. Then the officer has much less to work with, and you stop feeding the stop. Former police officers have confirmed this works because they know how much information casual talk gives away. One weird sentence can become probable cause language later. One nervous joke can end up sounding like an admission. Watch what happens when you keep talking just to be nice. The stop grows. The questions get sharper. The officer starts circling back. Your own words become the engine of the whole encounter. When you stay quiet the right way, that engine loses fuel. Let me be clear. Staying quiet does not mean being hostile. You can say, sir. You can say, ma'am. You can keep your hands visible. You can answer lawful document requests. But you do not have to help build a case against yourself. This is 100% legal. And the calmer you say it, the stronger you look on camera later. The third tactic may be the most important one in this whole video because it tells you whether the stop is still a stop or has turned into something else. Listen closely because this is critical. At some point, after the license check and the ticket talk, you need to force clarity. Here are the exact words. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Say it slowly, say it once, then wait. That question matters because officers often keep people talking after the traffic part should be over. They stand by the window, they ask one more thing, then one more, then they ask for consent, then they say a dog is coming. A lot of drivers don't realize the original reason for the stop may already be done. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said police cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the traffic issue unless they have independent, reasonable suspicion. Plain English, they don't get bonus time just to go fishing. So when you ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? You make the moment clear. If the officer says you're free to go, you leave. If the officer says you're being detained, now the line is drawn and the camera hears it. That can matter later. Here's the reality. A lot of people stay because they assume they have to, even after the stop should be over. Your question forces the officer to either justify more detention or end the encounter. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, I can stay and answer a few more questions. Then the stop drags on, a consent request comes next, and the whole thing gets worse. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to make a choice instead of keeping you in limbo. This does not mean you say it in the first 10 seconds. Timing matters. You use it after the basic mission of the stop should be wrapping up, after the documents, after the warning or ticket discussion, after the delay stops making sense. That is when the question becomes powerful. And yes, you can say it in a calm voice without sounding combative. In fact, calm is your best weapon here. Defense attorneys love that question because it cuts through the fog. It exposes whether the encounter is consensual or forced. If it is consensual, you can leave. If it is forced, the officer needs legal grounds. That simple sentence can turn a vague, slippery roadside conversation into a clear legal moment, and clear legal moments are exactly what protect you later. Now here's the fourth tactic, and this one saves people from making a terrible mistake when the officer gives a command that sounds like a request. You may hear, "Step out of the car for me," or "Come back here and talk to me." Many drivers freeze because they think every order must be a trick. But this one is different. If the stop is lawful, police can usually order the driver out of the car. That comes from Pennsylvania versus Mimms. In plain English, the court said officer safety outweighs the small inconvenience to you of stepping out. So your move is not to resist. Your move is controlled compliance without surrendering your rights. Here's exactly what you say. I will step out, but I do not consent to any searches. That sentence is gold because it does two things at once. It shows you are complying with a lawful order, and it repeats that you are not giving permission for a search. Bad way. Most drivers say, why? I didn't do anything. I'm not getting out. Then tension jumps, the stop gets more dangerous, and now you may face extra charges or force. Good way. Smart drivers say, I will step out, but I do not consent to any searches. Then you obey the order, protect yourself, and avoid handing over consent. This matters because officers sometimes use movement and confusion to create more openings. Once you are outside, they may ask to pat you down. They may ask what's in your pockets. They may ask if there are weapons in the car. They may walk you away from the vehicle and keep chatting. You need to know the difference between compliance and cooperation. Compliance means you follow lawful orders. Cooperation, in the way police often mean it, means you help them gather evidence. Those are not the same thing. If you step out calmly, keep your hands visible, and repeat that you do not consent, you look reasonable. If the officer has a lawful basis to frisk for weapons, they may still do that. But you are not helping them stretch it. You are making it clear that every extra step is their decision, not your permission. That matters a lot. Now let's tie the law together in plain English so you never forget why these lines work. Schneckloth versus Bustamonte tells you why consent is dangerous. If you voluntarily say yes to a search, that search can hold up in court. So you block that by clearly saying you do not consent. Salinas versus Texas tells you why silence should be spoken, not just felt. If you want the protection, you clearly say you are choosing to remain silent. Rodriguez versus United States tells you cops cannot keep stretching a traffic stop just to investigate other stuff without real legal grounds. So you use the question about detention or leaving to expose whether the stop is still lawful. And Pennsylvania versus Mimms tells you why you may have to step out of the car during a lawful stop so you comply without giving away more rights. That is the whole system. Refuse consent, invoke silence, force clarity, comply with lawful orders without volunteering anything extra. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. You do not need fancy legal words. You need short sentences under pressure. Now let me walk you through a real stop so you can hear how this sounds in your own mouth. You're driving home at night. Lights flash behind you. You pull over safely. Your hands stay visible. The officer says you rolled through a stop sign. Then he asks where you're coming from. Wrong way first. You laugh. Say you're coming from a friend's place, admit you might have been speeding, mention there's a gym bag in the back, and agree when he asks to take a quick look because you have nothing to hide. Watch what happens. Now, the stop is no longer just about a stop sign. It's about your story, your body language, your bag, and your consent. One simple question became 4 more. 4 became 10. 10 became a search. Now the right way. You hand over your license, registration, and insurance. You do not dig around wildly. You do not narrate your life story. When the officer asks where you're coming from, you say, "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent and I'm not answering questions without a lawyer." If he asks to search, you say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." If he orders you out, you say, "I will step out, but I do not consent to any searches." If the ticket business seems done but he keeps fishing, you say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" That is it. Short, clean, calm, no speeches. And look at the difference. In the wrong version, you become the source of the evidence. In the right version, the officer has to rely on what he actually has, not what you nervously donated. That is a massive difference. Your goal is not to win an argument on the roadside. Your goal is to get through the stop safely while protecting your future. These lines do exactly that. Next week, I'm breaking down the smell trick and what to say when police claim they smell weed from your car. Subscribe right now because that video will show you the next trap people fall into after they refuse consent. So let's lock this in. If police ask to search, your line is simple. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." If police start asking fishing questions, your protection is simple. "I'm choosing to remain silent and I'm not answering questions without a lawyer." If the stop should be ending, force clarity with, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" And if you are lawfully ordered out, comply calmly while repeating that you do not consent. Those 4 moves keep you respectful, controlled, and hard to trap. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video before you need it in real life. Smash like if this taught you something you were never taught in school. And drop a comment telling me which exact line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe, stay calm, and protect your rights.